I know both of you are, and neither does your website, by the way. You're not making some, huge claims about what this can do in terms of protection and sensationalist stories, although there are some that are pretty sensational. But there, with higher consciousness fields, we've seen this in past events when there were disasters or something like that. There were always the odd house or houses that stayed untouched by disasters where everything else was torn down. And then when you do a little bit of research, you realize, oh, there was either people that were intensely praying in there, had a very high consciousness, or were meditating, or something like that to that effect. I know you've told me off camera you've seen some of these similar effects. Again, I know you don't want to sensationalize it, but not as a point of, okay, this will protect your house, but you have seen some of these effects, and these are they are real. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we would, if we had some customers on, they would absolutely say, well, this was happening in my neighborhood, and it stopped at the border of my property, and everybody's house was affected, and I believe, it was FLFE, and we just don't think we should say those things, but they would absolutely, swear on a stack of Bibles, so to speak, that it was that influence. And I did. So I spent 25 years as a coach and business coach, primarily specialized in business as a spiritual path. And I did work with a lady one time who she was a feng shui master. In fact, she was the first person to get a acknowledgement from the U.S. president of the time as the International Feng Shui Award. That's not the name of it, but she was extraordinary, very well known. And she did a lot of homes all the way around the world. And one of the homes she did was in the area where they had the tsunami a couple of decades ago. And it was in a really kind of high-end apartment building. The tsunami hit the building, and the apartments around the one she had feng shuied were highly damaged. Like wood through the windows, smashed glass, and the place that she had feng shuied was it was not harmed. It was the only one in the whole wall of apartments. And
wow,
that's kind of anecdotal evidence, but if we're telling stories that are even that are separate from FLFE, just a high consciousness field, which happens when you bring harmony to an environment through the principles of feng shui, right? So the average home, according to our research, using kinesiology and the Dr. Hawkins scale of consciousness, the average home goes up 40 points in consciousness. And so to a degree, that's a high consciousness field. And she had a lot of stories about not only homes surviving natural disasters or extreme weather events. There's a whole series of, a bunch of people come into a neighborhood and they go down the street and they break into a bunch of cars, right? And they just happen to skip over that house. Things like that you hear quite often. And there's some type of pattern that goes on when you have a high consciousness field on a property. And it doesn't provide you protection from burglary. It doesn't, you can't really guarantee those things. So that's where the conversation gets tricky, because when you have a lot of anecdotal evidence, and some sensational, extraordinary events that are just hard to understand why that would happen, it's easy for the mind to start to assume it's because of a high consciousness field and to want to equate it in a way that the high consciousness field didn't necessarily cause. It's a fine line. So we tend to walk on the conservative side of that line. And we do have hundreds of extraordinary stories, like just hundreds and hundreds. And
you deserve the truth, but big tech does not want you to hear it. So we built our own Inspired platform on theinspiredchannel.com. To watch the full video and more, just click the link in the video description or the pinned comment.